Lady Furina's biggest pros and cons. That's what I aim to tell you all today, since after all, it's our beloved's first rerun. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. Furina does an incredible amount of buffing, even at C0. It's her primary role, and at C0, if you max out her fanfare fully, then she can provide your team with an upwards of 75% damage bonus. This is huge! Compare this to Kazuha, who's also a damage bonus buffer, that can provide up to 40% damage bonus if you can reach 1000 EM with him. Or, better yet, use them together in the same team for a damage bonus percent monopoly. Of course, it's worth mentioning that the amount of damage bonus you get from Furina will vary from team to team because it depends on the healer you're using. For example, some healers heal team-wide, single target, may heal faster or slower, etc. Furina's fanfare gain depends on the gaining and loss of HP, so a Xian Yun would provide Furina with faster fanfare thanks to fast team-wide healing over the likes of Kuki Shinobu, who provides slower, single-character healing. Damage bonus is an extremely great stat, and Furina makes sure you have no shortage of it. Another thing about Furina's buffing is that it is team-wide. Compare that to Yelan's ramping damage bonus, which caps out at 50% and only applies to your current character on field. Furina's damage bonus affects literally every single member in your team, including Furina herself. The very worst you could yield out of Furina is a 30% damage bonus, which is still a great increase to everyone on the team. Think of all the teams where multiple characters are doing sources of damage that like damage bonus, such as Hu Tao Double Hydro, and Furina of course benefits herself with her own damage bonus, so she becomes a nice additional source of sub DPS on top of her major buffing. I think it would be fair for me to say that Furina is the best buffer in the game. What's also nice is that damage bonus percent is very unconditional, in the sense that certain characters are not locked off from Furina's benefits. Think about how Bennett is useless for Noivalette, for instance, because Noiv has zero use for attack, whereas Furina can benefit literally any DPS. The only team where Furina's buffs aren't as good are teams with transformatives, like Bloomcores, as she doesn't buff those. But for all your traditional DPS needs, Furina is right there to help. Sub DPSs tend to have an alright amount of contribution, but Furina's damage contribution is pretty nice. Now, it's not the main reason you're using her, as Furina's main deal is damage bonus. But compared to other sub DPSs, Furina has really nice contributions. At C0 with a 4-star weapon, her contributions are equal to, or better than, Yelan's in terms of damage. She also has a slightly better AoE than her. Not a lot of AoE, but a little. For example, if Kazuha groups up a few enemies, Furina will be able to damage them all with her 3 little guys. She can also do nearly double of Xingqiu's sub DPS at her absolute best. Even 7 months after her release, she still dominates over the Bad Hair Day duo at lower investments. Though it is worth mentioning that if you give them both a 5-star weapon, then Yelan and Furina become more competitive with each other. But honestly, just use them together to form a really strong double hydro core. It's a pretty big deal that she can just go toe-to-toe with these units, because Yelan is an incredible 5-star, and Xingqiu is one of the best 4-stars in the game. This also means she consolidates more roles into one, and her DPS is not hard to access either, so you can get solid numbers out of her without having to break much of a sweat. The HP levels of enemies in the Abyss is only getting larger, so it's never bad to have a unit who contributes DPS to your whole team. It's no secret that Hydro is the best element in the game. Pretty much every Stellar meta team right now really likes Hydro, and Fontaine only exemplified that more with Noivalette being a crazy Hydro DPS, and Furina adding to the list of really powerful Hydro characters. Every reaction benefits from Hydro in some way, and Furina is a monster in vape teams where she can help super powerful DPSs reach their highest potential possible. Even in teams like Quick Bloom, where she doesn't really buff Dendro cores at all, she's still beneficial for the likes of Alhaitam's own damage or Sino, because that guy really appreciates characters that can help with his long field time. And Furina's abilities, all of them, have a very long field duration, and her 3 little guys help with his multi-wave issues. Goes to show that when it comes to Furina, there is literally something for everyone. Hydro Resonance also buffs plenty of the good Hydro characters we have right now, including Furina herself, Noivalette, and Yelan. Since we don't have any dedicated HP buffers, that's quite nice, aside from C4 Yelan for that one guy who keeps commenting about it. It can also help other HP scaling DPSs such as Hu Tao. Being the Hydro Archon, or pretend Archon, whatever you want to say, truly is a blessing. Furina's Hydro application is unconditional. Let me elaborate. Think about Xingqiu and Yelan. They apply Hydro when characters deal in normals. Sometimes with bursts like Raiden, they also proc their applications because Xingqiu and Yelan are programmed in a way where if a character executes a normal attack, they will proc even if the output is not a normal attack. This doesn't work on plunges though. However, there are plenty of characters who do not deal with these kinds of inputs for their source of damage, so they have to weave in awkward combos to utilize their Hydro application efficiently. Think about Diluc or that boy Jia Ming's plunge playstyle. They have to weave in Yelan and Xingqiu procs, but with Furina, when they are airborne, Furina will still be applying Hydro, so when they land they can vape. It's very nice and consistent. So no matter what, you'll always have Hydro application when dealing with Furina, no matter your character of choice. Gotta love Furina keeping us all hydrated. I think we all know that Furina works in every team in the game. Literally anywhere you put her, she will function. Furina not only makes everyone work better, but also opens up the chance for literally any DPS in the game to use 4-piece mayonnaise hunters. She gives every character access to HP loss mechanics. It's nice that her main set from C0 to 5 is in the same domain as hunters, plus if you have C6, then Trip is a pretty nice pair with hunters. Plus, every team in the game can benefit from what she provides. There's not much more for me to say other than once you play Furina once, you'll wish that there was 2 of her. Let me tell you this, every single one of Furina's clones is a massive upgrade for her, and her high investment yields absurdly good rewards. Her C1 makes her buff less backloaded, as she immediately gains plenty of fanfare and increases the cap from 300 to 400. Her C2 gives her so much HP that you can run a Hydro Goblet and cause her sub DPS to be a much larger part of her kit, and allows nearly every Furina team to easily cap out on fanfare. C4 massively lowers ER requirements, and C6 gives you potentially the best DPS in the game. I have a much more in-depth video on Furina's comms and high investment playstyle, which you should absolutely check out after this one if you're interested. I own a C6R1 Furina myself, and this video covers the full topic far better than I could ever do here, rather than condensing all the good info I have on the topic, which I've already talked about at length. Furina's high investment is genuinely beastly. Yes, her cons are worth it, and in my opinion, go for C1, then C2, then get Splendor because her damage becomes more relevant after C2. You could even go to C3 first before getting her signature if you really care about optimizing her buffing. This isn't combat related, but the fact that she can walk on water is pretty neat. Finally, we can travel from Liyue to Inazuma the right way. However, Furina does have a few nitpicks. First off, her buff is backloaded. This means that you need to complete most of your rotation so that you can yield out most of Furina's buff, and at C0 you don't get most of the buff up front. This isn't a con for Furina that has C1 and above, but for all you first time Furina enjoyers who are only getting her C0, this is worth noting. Some characters don't max out Furina as fast as others. Neuvillette will max out Furina's fanfare way faster than somebody who doesn't have natural HP drain and gain. This means you will often kill all the enemies before you max out all of Furina's buff. Honestly, this is a nitpick, since you're still clearing at the end of a day, but sometimes you might overestimate the buff that Furina gives you. I don't consider this a huge deal, considering that most healers have a place within teams, and you'll usually want to run them for other reasons anyway, like running Xian Yun for plunge purposes, or Kuki Shinobu for Hyperbloom. But sustainless teams and shielder-based teams that feature no consistent healing just won't work as well with Furina. Though we do have plenty of good 4-star options to help with this, which I'll elaborate more on in my upcoming rerun guide. So you lose the option of potentially using a more offensive character, or maybe even a shielder like Zhongli with universal res shred. But let me tell you, Furina is almost always more worth using over these kinds of characters anyway, because she gives you so much more than what you may potentially lose. I don't consider her low Hydro application to be a huge deal, because if application is what you're after, then you'll typically play her in double Hydro with Yelan or Xingqiu. Though it can be a little inconsistent, since it's a bit sporadic and can also be somewhat, predictable. What do I mean by that? Considering her Hydro application comes from summons, rather than you doing an action such as a normal attack, something along those lines, you rely on the pet's AI to notice they are close enough to the enemy. Their intervals also do not line up in a way where their application rate is consistent. Sometimes you get 2 applications in quick succession, but at other times you have to wait 2 whole seconds for your next dollop of Hydro application. However, this is no deal breaker. Her Hydro will generally be enough for you to clear comfortably with most teams, and she's a big upgrade within double Hydro either way. You should be overall covered. Listen, I know people hate the phrase must pull, but she is literally the best character in the game. Furina will absolutely make your Genshin Impact experience much more enjoyable, and she is one of my favorite characters in the game, resting comfortably at my number 2 spot. There's just so much to love about this goofball, even outside of just her kit. I highly recommend her to literally everybody who plays this game. Free-to-plays, low spenders, and whales alike. Let us all unite as we rejoice in the fact that Furina has finally returned once again. Hopefully this video was able to tell you Furina's biggest updated pros and cons. This has been Juice, signing out, and I promise you that pulling for Furina shall make your world come alive!